Anybody in here ever been in the middle of a really hard time? 6 of you. The rest of you, I want to touch you because you must be living that kind of amazing life. And seriously, anybody in here ever been under pressure in the middle of a hard time? Yeah, a lot of us have. And where you feel like there's so much coming against you, whether it's in your relationship or a job or your finances. But I think who we really are comes out under pressure. One of the most challenging and annoying verses to me is in James, and I'm pretty sure this particular verse has never made it onto a refrigerator magnet or onto a t-shirt that you could buy. This is not on there. James 1, verse 2, it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds." And it's talking about financial trials, marriage collapse, loss of a job, medical challenges. It says, "Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so then you'll be mature and complete, not lacking anything." So to me, when I look at this, I realize that maturity doesn't come from how old I am or from what I know. Right. Maturity comes from what I persevere through. Right. Basically, what it's saying is let the pressure produce good things. Yeah. And in evaluating our leaders, whether it's scholars or historians or just the average person, the greatest leader is oftentimes determined by the magnitude of the crisis during which they led. Abraham Lincoln for his direction during a time when our country was ripped in two. Winston Churchill for his guidance when England was at war. Martin Luther King Jr. when this country was divided. And when we go through difficulties, we think life is terrible, and it certainly feels that way. But it was the difficulties that these men faced that actually led to their greatness. Right. There is greatness within you. And it will be revealed in the midst of the challenges you go through. Greatness, or its opposite, will be revealed in the midst of pressure. At one point in his life, the Apostle Paul was a prisoner, and he was imprisoned for his faith. Ultimately, he would be beheaded. And while he is in there, he wrote some letters to the churches, some of which he himself had started. And many people would call these books, Ephesians, Colossians, and Philippians, the prison epistles. Well, in the last chapter of the book of Colossians, he encourages people with 3 simple thoughts. And this is someone who had navigated some really hard moments. He'd given his life for his faith in Jesus. So I'm thinking we should pay attention to the man. Right? He might know a thing or two. And so perhaps doing these things just might help us when the pressure is on. Are you ready? Yes. Are you ready? Yes. Okay. Colossians 4:2 says this: "Pray diligently, stay alert, with your eyes wide open in gratitude." Right. Okay, the first thing it says is pray diligently. Diligence, persevere. It means courageously persistent. It comes from a word meaning persist in adhering to. It means devotion. Yeah. He's saying pray with devotion. Yeah. It means you are stuck like glue to the object of your devotion. You don't allow anything to come between you and the object of what you're devoted to. Yeah. I mean, think of some things that you're devoted to. Your family, your job, music, football, your favorite TV show. I mean, come on, a truly devoted football fan cheers and screams at the TV when their team is on the field. My parents are Texans, right? And so as far as they were concerned, there's no other team than the Dallas Cowboys. And my mother is a Dallas Cowboy fanatic. She's 82 years old, and still, when they come on the television, she is yelling at them, she's yelling at the coach, she's throwing things, she's passionately devoted to the Dallas Cowboys. And then there are some fans, right, who camp outside the gate, for overnight to, get into a concert perhaps, or to be the first one to see a movie that comes out. Now, the only movie I have ever done that with was The Empire Strikes Back in 1980. Do I have any Star Wars fans in the room? Yes. I didn't care how long the wait. I was getting into that theater on opening day. And then later, when the prequels came out, I took my kids. My son Jordan was a young boy, and we purchased all of the little figurines, which of course I said were for him. They were not. I was just as into it as he was, probably more. And then this last Star Wars I've seen multiple times. I still can't get over Kylo Ren. Why is he so mad? But anyway, I'm passionately devoted. Right? Well, Paul says that's the kind of attitude that we're supposed to have when it comes to prayer. I mean, maybe you grew up in a home where you didn't pray, or maybe in your home prayer was just this religious obligation, or maybe it was something that you should do. I mean, maybe you don't even know what to say. Maybe you struggle with, what am I supposed to recite? Or maybe when you pray, you just find yourself being distracted. I mean, we're busy. We're in a hurry. We are moving fast. So sometimes it's difficult to just find the time and the space, or maybe you find your mind wandering to other things. Or maybe you're a little cynical, or suspicious about prayer. Maybe you prayed for something for a long time and you didn't get the answer that you wanted. And so you're left thinking, God, why didn't you do something about that? Yeah. I imagine everyone in this room has a that they've prayed for. Some of you are still waiting for that. Some of you are still dealing with that. Some of you are frustrated at that. Some of you are sitting next to that. And some of you are wondering if God really cares, if he's listening. But if you look through the scripture, I mean, regardless of what you think about the Bible or your religious background, if you just open up and look through the Bible, if you look at the stories, it is almost all a form of prayer. From Adam and Eve talking to God in the garden, all throughout it, the Bible is full of men and women who talked to their God, and he answered. Moses cried out to God, and God spared Israel from judgment. Joshua's prayer made the sun stand still. Hello. Hannah's prayer was answered with a baby boy. Solomon got wisdom in answer to his prayer. Jonah's prayer brought him out of the belly of a whale. 10 lepers prayed and were instantly healed. And the book of Psalms is a book of prayer. And I love the book of Psalms because it's a window into how to pray really. Like David's prayers were so honest and open, and you almost feel like you're eavesdropping on conversations. Right. He's praying things like, help me, God, listen to me. Where are you? I mean, David boldly went to his God, and he was real with him. And then if you look at the life of Jesus, the one thing Jesus did more than anything else is he prayed. Right. He was perfect, like Son of God, perfect. And he prayed. So I'm thinking, maybe we should, right? Right. And then even when the crowds would gather around him, he would find moments to withdraw. When life got so busy, rather than trying to solve more stuff, he would often just withdraw and pray. He believed it mattered, which is why the disciples wanted to be students of prayer more than anything else. See, the disciples came to Jesus in Luke 11, and they said, teach us to pray. Yep. Do you know that in all 4 Gospels, there is only one recorded request of the disciples asking Jesus to teach them anything? Wow. And it was, teach us to pray. I mean, think about that. They saw him preach. They saw him heal people. They saw him raise the dead. They saw him walk on water. They saw him speak to the wind and the waves. And they didn't say, hey, Jesus, show me how to walk on water. Show me how to raise the dead. Show me how to heal the sick. They said, teach us to pray. Yeah. It's as if they knew that's where his power came from. So, pray with devotion. Right. Now, when should we pray? Well, back to James. James 5 says, are any of you suffering hardships? You should pray. Are you happy? You should sing praises. Are you sick? You should call for the elders of the church to come and pray over you, anointing you with oil in the name of the Lord. Such a prayer offered in faith will heal the sick, and the Lord will make you well. And if you've committed any sins, you'll be forgiven. Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so you may be healed. The earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results. Yeah. So don't miss what James is saying here. He's saying, whatever situation you're in, you need to be facing it with God, communicating freely with him. And so in this passage, James is highlighting a few different scenarios which we need to turn our face toward God in prayer. And so the first thing he talked about, he said when we suffer hardship, when we're in trouble. Now, I have some emojis that are going to help me and help you remember this. Yeah. So when we're in trouble, do we have that emoji? There it is. When you feel like your life is that. Now, my mom thought that was chocolate ice cream for a long time. Mom, no. That would be not chocolate ice cream. But so we're supposed to pray when we're in trouble. Now, this word actually is only used a few times in the entire New Testament, the word for trouble, it means suffering through tough times not related to physical problems. This is the time when there isn't enough money to pay the bills. This is the time when an earthquake destroys your home, which is what it did for us a number of years ago, or when your friend is acting like a jerk and destroying your friendship, or when your marriage is at a rough place, when your child is hurting, pray. When the rug is being pulled out from under you, pray. When you're confused, pray. When you feel overwhelmed, pray. That's what he's saying. So we're to pray when we're in trouble. And the second thing he says, we're to pray when we're happy. When we're happy. We teach our kids to say thank you when they receive something from someone, and we should. We just want to make sure that we actually give thanks to God, right? When good things come our way. And so in this verse, James is reminding those who are happy, those who are on the mountaintop, and if that's you, lucky you. Amazing. But what he's saying is, pray, thank him. Don't forget who gave it to you. We're reminded to not forget. See, God doesn't want to be there just simply to lift us up in times of trouble. He actually wants to be our companion in the good times too. He wants to hear from us. In this room, there is reason to rejoice. We saw some praise reports, people who got provision and people whose lives were touched and bodies were healed. So there is reason to rejoice. There is reason to turn our face toward God. So is anybody happy? Then you should thank God. So we're to pray when we're in trouble. We're to pray when we're happy. And the third says we're to pray when we're sick. Now, our first response to sickness should be to pray. Take whatever treatment you're going to take. But how about if your first response is to pray?
So good.
Right? So we're to pray when we're in trouble. We're to pray when we're happy. We're to pray when we're sick. And we're actually supposed to pray when we sin. See, rather than feeling guilty or running off, James says, turn to God. Confess your sins to one another in front of God. Like pray. See, oftentimes the plan of the enemy is when we mess up, and we all mess up. There is no perfect person in this room. We all messed up this week. Right? And so our natural inclination is to want to hide. But he's saying, don't do that. He says, come, pray, confess your sins. So in all those situations, we should pray, and that pretty much covers everything. Right? So Colossians 4:2 says, pray diligently, stay alert with your eyes wide open in gratitude. So the second is to stay alert. Luke 12 says, then Jesus turned to the crowd and said, when you see clouds beginning to form in the west, you say, here comes a shower, and you're right. When the south wind blows, you say, today will be a scorcher, and it is. He says, you fools. I love Jesus. You know how to interpret the weather signs of the earth and sky, but you don't know how to interpret the present times. I think you and I need to get good at interpreting the time. In Southern California, where I live, similar to here, we don't really get to experience the seasons. Palm trees don't change colors. And I have never built a snowman on my front yard. Basically, I live in perpetual spring and summer without the humidity. And I'm good with that. My hair stays when I'm at home. But those people who live other places, they're often better prepared for changing seasons. Even here, in a lot of the places in Florida, you have to prepare for hurricane season. You close the windows and put stuff in front of them, and then they have to winterize the gardens in some part of the country. I don't even know what that means. What is winter? I don't even know. So the Apostle Peter then continues that thought, challenging us in 1 Peter 5. And what I want, they're going to put it on the screens, and we're all going to read this together, right? I'm going to count to 3, and we're all going to read it together. 1, 2, 3. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Be alert. It means vigilant, sleeplessly watchful. Now, I don't think this means we can't ever take a nap, but I do think it means that if we want to be victorious, we have to be vigilant. We have to be watchful to what's going on around us. I'm sure you've seen those police shows where the officers are on a stakeout and the officer has to be alert and ready to catch the criminal that they were sent there for. And they can't just sit in their patrol car and play video games. And I'm sure that in the dark, quiet moments, it would be so easy to get bored or fall asleep. But I'm sure there are moments when the officers suspect that the criminal isn't even coming. And I'm sure there are moments when they just want to leave. But what if they do? What if they fall asleep? Well, I think they'll miss what they were sent there for. Maybe we are on a stakeout. We can't get distracted or fall asleep. We have to be alert to what we're here for.
So good.
We have to be alert to the times. Be alert to what's going on around us and within us. Almost 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer and began that journey. And I spent a couple of weeks in a holistic hospital, doing all sorts of alternative treatments. And one of the tests that I was given was a stress test. And so the doctor comes to me and he says, Holly, tell me how you're feeling. How do you feel like you're doing? And I said, you know what? Actually, I'm feeling good. I mean, I know I got that diagnosis, but I have faith and I'm surrounded with good people and I'm good. And he goes, okay. So then he hooked me up to all this stuff and then he gave me the test. And then when it was finished, he came back to me and he said, well, actually, Holly, the stress level in your body is as if you're staring a roaring lion in the face. And the deal was, I was unaware of it. He said, that's the problem. Wow. He said, you're not aware of what's going on within you. Wow. So I had to learn what actually caused me stress and how to process it, how to get it out of my body. And that is a lifelong journey, let me just tell you. But I had to be alert to what's going on within me. We have to be alert to what's going on in our home, with your children or with your spouse. I mean, have you ever driven home, pulled in your driveway, and you don't remember getting there? That's scary. Right? See, in driving, the mission is to get to where we're going safely, and yet often we text or listen to music. We're not paying attention. Right? We have to be alert. My daughter one time fell asleep at the wheel and had this accident, this big crash, and, miraculously, she was okay. But I just wonder if that's what doesn't happen sometimes. We're not alert to what's going on around us, and our lives just end up crashing in all sorts of places. So the Apostle Paul is telling us to be focused and alert to what's going on in us and around us. Alert. Those of you that are part of this church, alert to what's going on in your own church. Here you are in the new building, and you've got GCLI coming up and Kingdom Builders and Echo Conference next year. Be alert to what God is doing in your church. And then be alert to the needs in your city. See, the needs in your city might be different than mine. People start things with good intention, but it doesn't meet the needs of your city, of your neighborhood. Be alert to what's going on. Alert, focus. Be alert to the needs in our nation. Our world is not well. Perhaps we're supposed to be the ones demonstrating what it is to walk in racial unity. Right. See, the world is in chaos, but which we're supposed to be alert to. We're not supposed to pretend that it isn't there. Right. We're supposed to be the solution. That's right. Politics will never solve it. Right. God didn't anoint government to heal the broken. Right. Oh, wow. He anointed the church. All right, Colossians 4:2. Pray diligently, stay alert with your eyes wide open in gratitude. All right, let's determine to be grateful. Yes. Everyone wants to be grateful. I mean, who wants to be ungrateful? Raise your hand. But the question is, what's your plan to become a more grateful person? Right. Because how are you going to do that? Nobody just drifts into gratitude. We have this problem when it comes to gratitude. We say thank you when someone does something for us, or thank you when we're given a gift, and we should. But if we start to think that we'll be more grateful to the extent that we receive things, or more grateful to the extent that, our circumstances go our way, then gratitude becomes a product of our circumstances. And gratitude is always, always, always a decision of the heart. Right. It is not a result of circumstances. Yeah. Have you ever noticed that two people can be in the same situation? Right, the same job, the same class at school, the same long Starbucks line, same church, and one of them is filled with gratitude, and the other is just like, wah, 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 wah. Right? Perhaps it's because what one person sees as a right, the other person sees as a gift. At least 6 times, Paul speaks of gratitude in this very short letter. And then in another letter, he teaches us that gratitude is the will of God. We're going to read this one together as well. 1 Thessalonians 5, beginning of verse 16. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ. A thankful heart is more than a good idea. It's the will of God for his people. See, so many times we're wondering what God's will is for our life. As a pastor, that is one question I get asked quite often. What is my purpose? What is God's will for my life? And so people are just wondering, like it's a mystical thing. Ooh. The will of God is not mystical. It is not mystical. The first step in discovering God's will for your life is be grateful. Be grateful. Be grateful. The first step is right in front of us. We're going to practice that right now. All right, I want you to turn to the person next to you and just say, thank you. Now turn to your second choice and say, thank you. Do you know, right there, in that moment, all of us were in the will of God. Amazing, amazing. So I don't know what would help you on this journey to becoming a more grateful person. Maybe it's maintaining a gratitude journal, or maybe something simpler. Maybe before you get out of bed in the morning, before your feet hit the floor, just one thing that you're thankful for. Just one thing, not a list, one thing. In our kitchen, we have this jar. And my husband put that jar in our kitchen. It's our gratitude jar. It's about this big. And he put it in our kitchen, and he put a stack of Post-it notes next to it. And he did that during a really horrible season in our life. About 4 years ago began 2 years of really, really hard. It was the hardest 2 years of my life. It was the hardest 2 years of ministry, and there were so many times in those 2 years I wanted to quit. I was done with this. And it started with my father passing away suddenly. Now, my dad had been my best encourager, my biggest cheerleader. I was very well loved by my dad. And I know how blessed I am to have had a father like that. Really grateful. And he fell and hit his head and had a brain bleed and died suddenly. So I'm dealing with the loss of my dad. And then someone steals Phillips and my identity. And they kind of hack in through his Gmail account and then get to the bookkeeper, and then she gets to the bank. It was this very convoluted way, but they got into our savings account and basically wiped it out. The FBI got involved in everything, but we never got that money back. So dealing with a heartbreak loss of my dad, and then this financial loss, so I'm processing all of that. And then my husband gets diagnosed with cancer. And then the treatment of the cancer was so bad and hard that it fully compromised his immune system. And so then he gets shingles, then he gets the worst case they'd ever seen, and he can't walk for 5 months, much less lead a church. And, men, they're amazing, like until they're sick. I mean, okay, it was more than a cold, all right, but, and so in that time, so he's hurting and he's wounded and he's questioning himself, and then we're dealing with the loss, and at that season my daughter was making some decisions that could potentially be incredibly damaging, and it's her story to tell, but I was in the middle of all that, trying to lead at church, trying to take care of a husband, and so it was just fractured, and it was painful and it was hard, and there were some people who should have had my back, people who I'd shown grace to and expected grace back, and I didn't get grace back. In fact, I got stabbed in the back. And there were a couple of friends in that season who just utterly betrayed me. And I could see myself getting so cynical. I started getting a little sarcastic, cynical, and bitter. And it wasn't, it started perhaps as a root of bitterness, but it was a full bush. It was bitter. And I'm the extrovert. I'm the party in a bottle person. I talk all the time. I like people. I'm people-y. I'm a very people-y person. I touch people. Don't come next to me if you don't want me to hug you or touch you. I respect no boundaries. I just hug people. I'm just warning you right now. That's who I am. So in this season, I just found myself wanting to sit on the couch and not talk to anybody. And in that season, the Spirit of God showed me a picture of who that woman would become. And she was this bitter, twisted old woman. And I didn't want to be her. So I began the process of pulling out, letting the Spirit of God in to heal the places. I began intentionally forgiving people. Now, I never felt like forgiving them. Let me just clarify that. I have a black belt in karate. Seriously, I want to break their face. Right? That's what I want to do. Right? I never felt like forgiving them. I just made the decision, forgive. And then sometimes it was like every 60 seconds because their face would come in front of me. I'd be like, forgive them, forgive them. Until it was like, once an hour and once a day and forgive. Then it was a little less. And then God said, no, you have to pray to blessing on them. Oh. Like he just pushes it, right? I wanted to bless them like with a brick, right? Just doing the work. And then in the middle of that, that's when Philip put that jar. He said, Holly, every day we're going to come down to our kitchen and we're going to write on a Post-it note something we're grateful for, and we're going to put it in that jar. Oh. See, my husband is the Christian, right? Every marriage should have one, right? And he's the Christian. So I came down to the kitchen the first day, and he tried to make the Post-it notes like colorful, thinking that would help me. It doesn't help me. So I'm looking at him, and I go, oh, okay. I got nothing, right? I was just mad. But I knew he was going to count. So, okay, so I'm thinking, oh, coffee. Anybody else thankful for coffee, or would that just be me? Yep, right? Next day I come down. Oh. Strong coffee. Then about the fourth day, because it was coffee for a lot of days, and then maybe the fourth or fifth day, I looked outside and go, oh, there's sun. Okay, sunshine, which is not unusual where I live, right? Put it there. And then eventually it became my home and my family. And then it became my church. But it was a journey. And you know what? I never felt like it. It was always a decision of my heart. But I just knew if I was going to get through this season, this time of pressure, I was going to have to determine to be grateful.
That's so good.
Give thanks in all circumstances. He doesn't say for the circumstance. He says in it. Now, remember when Paul was writing that, he was in prison. Hello. But the letter that he's writing is so full of gratitude. There's a man named Dr. Dale Robbins, and he wrote this. He said, I used to think people complained because they had a lot of problems. But I've come to realize that they have problems because they complain. Yeah. Complaining doesn't change anything. Right. It doesn't make situations better. It just amplifies frustration. It spreads discontent and discord. Complaining makes us miserable. Right? Psalm 77, David says, I complained and my spirit was overwhelmed. Now, the Apostle Paul, his life was filled with so many difficulties that he could complain about. I mean, how many of us would put up with constant stress and confusion and persecution and shipwrecks and imprisonments and beatings, right? Permanent injuries, but still he was thankful. Yeah, right. How? Because he had learned a secret. He learned a secret. Philippians 4, verse 11 says, I've learned to be content. Whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. Right. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. Now, we love to quote that last part. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. We love that. What things? What things can we do? The secret of being content in any and every situation. Right. That's what he's talking about. He learned the secret of not living life based on the conditions around him. He could be content in prison and at home. His happiness was not based on circumstances. It was based on his relationship with Jesus. He knew that he had all he needed in him, for it was Christ who gave him the strength. See, God is saying to us, don't wait to be grateful. Don't postpone gratitude until your situation changes or until you've acquired a certain thing. Because if you can't be grateful now, you won't be grateful then. Because when you get there, there'll just be another list of things. So for me, also in that season, as I was working on my gratitude, I decided to make a list of the things that I most often complained about and instead gave thanks. So this is my list. You make up your own. I'm grateful for the traffic I'm driving in because it means I have a car. I'm grateful for the spot I find at the far end of the parking lot because it means I'm capable of walking. I'm grateful for a bad hair day because it means I have hair. If you've navigated cancer, you get that one. I'm grateful for my water bill and my electric bill because it means I can get water by simply turning on a faucet and electricity by flipping a switch. I'm grateful that I live in a country where the chances of me being beheaded for my faith are fairly small. I'm grateful for challenges in relationships because it means I have relationships worth fighting for. I'm grateful for all the complaining I hear in our government because it means we have the freedom of speech. I'm grateful for jet lag because it means I have friends and places worth flying around the world for. And I'm grateful for the alarm that goes off really, really, really early because it means God's trusted me with another day. I'm grateful. It's a decision. So I don't know what you might be in the middle of. It's probably something. I wish that life was mountaintop, 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 heaven. But it isn't. And in between those mountaintops, it's like, but you know what I found is that fruit doesn't grow on the mountaintops. Fruit grows in the valleys. Fruit goes in the valleys. So I don't know what situation or circumstance you might be in, but can I just encourage you to pray with devotion? Stay alert, wake up, and be grateful. Make the decision to be grateful.